A method once whispered among farmers, secretly passed from generation to generation, proved so radically effective that entire agricultural systems felt threatened by it. Not because it failed, not because it harmed crops, but because it made soil so fertile, so rapidly, that rising industrial powers stepped in to silence it. In the mid-1800s, fields that had been exhausted, broken, and barren suddenly came back to life. Crops doubled. Some tripled. Villages that once prayed for survival suddenly found their barns filled, the grain storage overflowing. And yet, rather than being celebrated, the technique was banned, discredited, and framed as a public menace. That controversy was not born from science, it was born from competition, profit, and fear. The method was simple, accessible, and powerful. It belonged to the common farmer, the everyday family working their land, not to corporations, not to fertilizers shipped across oceans, not to factories that turned nitrogen into an industry. What made it revolutionary then is what makes it astonishing now. It bypassed the entire commercial system and fed the soil more directly, more efficiently, and more naturally than any synthetic fertilizer ever could. Even today, with all our advancements, all our packets of compost and nutrient blends, gardeners are rediscovering that this forgotten formula doesn't just keep up, it frequently outperforms compost itself. Long before laboratories, before chemical bags stacked on hardware shelves, before industrial agriculture changed the rhythm of the soil, humanity understood one truth beyond debate: nutrients must be returned if life is to continue. Across China, Korea, and Japan, this balance was treated not as a technique, but as a way of life. Waste returned to earth. Earth returned food. Food sustained the people. And the cycle never broke. Fertility remained constant, not for a century, but for thousands of years. Chinese rice terraces that fed entire dynasties continued producing season after season without collapse, without soil starvation, without dependence on nitrate mines or chemical factories. The land endured because people respected the loop. Meanwhile, Europe in the 1800s found itself buried, quite literally, in its own expansion. Cities swelled. Houses tightened. Wells and water sources became dangerously contaminated. And yet, despite the chaos of urban waste, the agricultural miracle continued. Night soil, collected, carted, and aged, revived farmlands that had nearly given up. It was not crude improvisation. It was a survival system that worked so well it became feared. Not by farmers, but by the rising powers of the industrial fertilizer age. After all, if farmers could create fertility on their own, what role would chemical manufacturers play in their future? The ban did not mark the end of the method's scientific validity. It marked the beginning of corporate narrative control. Suddenly, what had saved millions from starvation was christened dangerous, dirty, and outdated. And people listened, not because they lacked proof of its success, but because sanitation failures in cities ignited public fear. It became easier to discard a system than refine it. Easier to bury a tradition than modernize it. Yet modern science has done exactly what lawmakers once refused to do. Today, soil researchers and regenerative gardeners are not returning to the past, they are updating it. They are taking the core principle, nutrients must return, and eliminating the risk. When handled correctly, diluted urine contains nearly the exact nitrogen profile of common synthetic fertilizers. Phosphorus, present. Potassium, present. All delivered in a soluble, plant-ready form that compost simply cannot match in speed. Compost is a long game, a beautiful one, but slow. Urine is immediate, highly absorbable, and astonishingly effective when applied the right way. The magic lies in balance. Compost builds structure, protects microbes, and holds moisture like a sponge. Urine, when diluted and applied wisely, delivers quick-release nourishment that turbocharges leafy growth, root establishment, and recovery from nutrient stress. Alone, each fertilizer is impressive. Together, they become something more resilient than either could be in isolation. Modern adaptations have finally given this banned method a legitimate scientific foundation. Composting toilets now eliminate pathogens through sustained high temperatures. No guesswork, no mystery, no risk. Dilution ratios like 110 or 120 keep roots safe while plants absorb nutrients with almost no waste. Eco-communities and sustainable farms are recovering resources that once washed uselessly into sewage plants or rivers, and returning them to soil with precision and safety previous centuries could never guarantee. For senior gardeners, and for anyone with limited space or mobility, this might be the most practical fertility technique in existence. No heavy bags. No lifting. No waiting months for compost to fully break down. A watering can, clean dilution, and routine rotation are all that's required. It brings gardening back to what it was meant to be: hands-on, intuitive, quietly powerful. And above all, deeply connected to nature instead of industry. So the question becomes, what was really lost when this method was banned? The answer reaches deeper than agriculture. A cycle was broken, the oldest cycle humanity ever knew. Instead of returning nutrients to the soil, societies flushed them away. Instead of maintaining fertility, they purchased it. Instead of working with nature's loop, they cut it open and replaced it with commerce. Restoring that loop today is not a regression, it is evolution. With modern hygiene, scientific standards, controlled composting, safe dilution, and soil monitoring, what was once risky becomes responsible. What was once feared becomes sustainable. And what was once outlawed becomes essential again. Those who garden in their later years understand this more than anyone. Gardening is not just food. It is grounding. It is memory. It is proof that time invested will bear fruit, sometimes literally. Returning nutrients to soil is not just a technique, it is participation in renewal. It is a quiet but profound way of saying that nothing nature gives us should be discarded without purpose. The farmers of the 1800s may have been silenced by industrial growth, but gardeners today are free to learn without shame, practice without fear, and adapt without repeating the mistakes of waste-driven modernity. The soil is not a machine to be fueled by chemicals, it is a living web of exchange. And when we feed it correctly, it feeds us back in abundance far beyond expectation. The next season of planting could be different. Stronger. More alive. Not because of what is purchased, but because of what is returned. This is gardening as it once was, and as it must become again.